So this is Adam Ramsey with openDemocracy. I'm at the Festival for New Economic Thinking in Edinburgh, which is a gathering of people from all around the world who are excited about ideas to build a new economy. And so we're going to go around and we're going to chat to people about a proposal to make things better where they are.
In Pakistan, the one thing that I'd like to change is the way we deal with foreign direct investment that's coming in. We're a country of more than 200 million people. There's a lot of money coming in, but we don't know what's going on with it.
In South Africa, don't know if you could call it an economic policy, but it's definitely an economic problem, and that is just general corruption within the government. And if you can institute some kind of public policy to reduce corruption, that's ideally what I'd like to go for there.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is land and the monopoly rent, sort of connected to the value of land, and then the endogenous credit creation of money by banks. So I think if we could somehow cut the link between the endogenous credit creation by banks and sort of the natural rent of land, if we could somehow cut that link, I think that would be my one policy proposal.
I think the 50p tax should be enforced. I think it's only fair that everybody pays equally what they earn, regardless of where they stand in society or what they make.
I'm Till, I'm from Germany, and I think one economic policy we really need to change is redistribution. We can't have a world where 60 people own as much as the other half of the population. So higher taxes for rich people is one thing we really need.
In the US, it would be great if we could consider the job guarantee, which would essentially get the federal government to guarantee that anyone who is willing and able to work actually has a job. And we can make that very productive for everyone involved, because it could go towards planting trees, fixing roads, improving bridges, and really build something for the greater good.
So I think for me, I've come down today to speak on on behalf of these ideas of alternative housing models. So and I'm coming from the Edinburgh Student Housing Cooperative. So if I can help talk through some ideas with people about creating more cooperative models across Scotland for rural and urban communities, then I think that'd be a really good thing, a really strong thing.
The one economic policy that I think should be implemented in my country, Kenya, is benefits for everyone, poor or rich, like it is in the UK. I think it really helps to increase spending, and it takes money back to the economy, and at the same time ensures that no one is completely out of food or a place to live. Yes.
So in Brazil, a good proposal would be to increase income tax, especially regarding profits, which are not taxed in Brazil.
So right now, unemployment rate in the U.S. is around 4.5%. Traditionally, economists think of full employment, the NAIRU, natural unemployment rate, where inflation isn't taking off, of 4.5%. But in that instance, we have millions of Americans who don't have a job. What's the primary way to obtain subsistence in the U.S.? It's through work. So we have people who are willing and able to work, yet we're not providing them with a means to subsistence. So the number one policy I think you could implement in the U.S. to radically reduce poverty and drastically improve bargaining power of workers is providing a public option for employment.
I think a policy that would really... So I study finance, and I think a lot of the financial system is driven by... Well, almost all of it is driven by private incentive profit motive, and I think that's led for the financial system into some really questionable deals, and it's also destabilized the economy in general. And so I think a lot more government involvement, a lot more, which would sort of orient the financial sector to more welfare-oriented things would be great, not only because it'll channel money where it's most needed, but it's also going to channel money away from speculative things, which is only making richer people rich and sort of destabilizing our economy. So I think that's one policy that we should really have.
Okay, I think there's a necessity of addressing the exploitation of fossil fuels, because we cannot keep on exploiting them. We need to keep them underground to be able to reach the Paris Agreement targets. So we need some kind of policy that can pay poor countries to keep their fossil fuels underground, basically, so not to exploit their fossil fuels. It was done in Ecuador, but it didn't work. But we could do it again, I think.
My experience isn't really in economics, but I think what I would like to look at is kind of universal basic income for various different people. And I've looked at some really good studies that have had some good ideas about kind of giving people money, and they tend to use it in really constructive ways, kind of founding businesses and all sorts of things like that. So I think that's what I'd like to look at. I'd like to see kind of specific case studies done on how universal basic income can can benefit people in the long run. So.
I would say a universal basic income, which is a very commonly discussed policy. But today I also heard about the concept of universal basic services, which I feel could be a complement to universal basic income. So to allow having like services like water, housing, and everything, and then an income on top of that, so people can just meaningfully participate in society. And
I feel that education and health, which is provided by the government, is very important if you want to develop. So I would say that focusing on education, free health, is the most important thing that at least we need to work on. And I would suggest for all the developing countries that provision of these basic services is important, corruption-free, at least when it comes to efficiency, it should be corruption-free. Thank you.
I just think it's a fairer form of running the economy, giving everyone the scope to, the freedom to, it's a real sense of freedom because you're not strapped into having to work for a job that you may not necessarily want to do. And it gives everyone the freedom to, a real sense of freedom to do what they want to do.
So I'm a microeconomist. I'm probably I'm coordinating the Behavior in Society Working Group, which is the only microeconomics group. And generally, I think if globally we could start moving towards bringing policy and economic policy or whatever policy to focus on the human being and not just the data that we get from the aggregate of human beings. So I think just shifting the perspective in the way we look at policy making and data and research, that could be something that I want to see happening in the world.
So the one policy I'd recommend for the UK would be QE for people, or overt monetary financing as we technically call it. This is the policy whereby the central bank gives money directly to government in a credibly constrained fashion so we can spend on the things we need like healthcare, education and infrastructure, and to create a sustainable demand function for the economy without relying on ever higher credit or ever higher asset prices to generate a little bit more household spending. So it's a way to move towards a better world in terms of the things we can produce and also to do in a way that's fairer and more sustainable.
So I think we should all work less and have much more time to pursue our fantasies and the things that make us happy.
I think the one economic policy that I would, instate if I could would be universal access to free childcare, everyone.
The economic policy that I would choose is shared parental leave, and making it compulsory. So having a short shared parental leave that can be split between mother and father.
I would change the law around the constitution of companies that are involved in key fundamental industries such as health, water, utilities and so on, so that they had key responsibilities to stakeholders and were not driven and controlled by their shareholders.